Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, August 30th, 2018. The crisis grows still deeper. Donald Trump ensconced in what purports to be the White House, tweeting out what purports to be tweets from the president. Let's see. What's he doing? He's just kind of basically going crazy out there and complaining and screaming and crying. But I just wanted to let you know, in case you haven't looked at his moronic tweets this morning, we have now gotten to the point where he is denying that his confession on television to Lester Holt to having fired James Comey in order to help him out with the Russia investigation is factual and true. He now claims that the tape was doctored in some way, and Lester Holt's interview with him was just another scheme of the lying media, and reiterating that they are enemies of the people in exactly those words. And it's all some sort of a setup. We are now, of course, in 25th Amendment territory and have been for a long time. There just aren't enough responsible people in the government to ever hope that they would invoke such a thing unless, I don't know, I guess it's possible one day Pence goes crazy and says, yes, it's my path to the presidency sooner rather than later, and let's just get to it. I don't know. We'll see whether this wakes anybody up. It hasn't changed Chuck Todd's approach to anything yet. Maybe because he wasn't talking to Donald Trump, and maybe he thinks he can compartmentalize this sort of thing. But I'm not seeing it here. He's interviewing. He was talking to the newly nominated. Is it Andrew Gillum? I now realize I haven't seen his first name enough to know who we're talking about. Talked about his campaign all day, but he sat down with him, and I didn't see the rest of the interview. I didn't see any context or anything like it. I don't know. I just saw the circulation of the brief clip out of his brief interview with Andrew Gillum. It's Gillum, not Gilliam. But just the tape that people are circulating is he just asks him, hey, what's the deal with you being a socialist or something? I don't know. And I'm sure it had more context, perhaps, but I don't know that it makes any difference in whether or not it was a good question. And Gillum answers the only way you can answer it. No, I'm a Democrat. I've run as a Democrat. I am a Democrat. He doesn't bother to get any deeper into it than that. But, that's basically the conversation. Everybody's now upset that he would waste Gillum's time with a question like that. Meanwhile, I'm wondering, what does it take for the press to really just say, yeah, enough with this guy over here? Lester Holt, NBC News anchor, interviews him on television. Everybody sees it, and he confesses to having fired Comey in order to help himself out with the Russia investigation, and then now says, no, it was all doctored. I mean, you can't make a more blatant facial attack on the integrity of the media than that, and then to reiterate by calling them enemies of the people again. And now they'll all stroke their chins and wonder, what should we do? And my goodness, the president has told 11 falsehoods. There's not that much else they can do. I mean, what should they be doing? They should go and burn down the White House and march him out of there at the point of pitchforks and cast him into the flames. Tie his hands behind his back and cast him into the flames is what they should do. Theoretically, that is to say, morally, this could perhaps be what he deserves. However, we are a country ruled by laws and not men, and so therefore, the path that's open to us is, of course, one that runs through the special counsel's office. I suggest that they just go ahead with their evidence and indict the president, whether he's sitting or not, sitting or standing. I say indict him, put him on trial, and wait for the inevitable newspaper headlines that say that the special counsel, Robert Mueller, is a bold maverick who is charting his own course in office without regard for the norms and established practices. He's doing what's right and what his base wants. And he's consolidating power in that way. I imagine we would never get, we'd never get Mueller to do such a thing, of course. And this is probably a good time to remind you, well, he's a Republican, so, and a conservative at that. So he might be a real type of conservative, like trying to conserve the existing norms and continue operating underneath them. And I think he thinks that's where his legitimacy comes from. And to some extent that is true. It is just interesting. I'm recalling all of the articles that bent over backwards to try to label Trump as just being this kind of, he was just a norm-defying, bold maverick who was making the office his own, as opposed to, I don't understand how anything works. I don't know where they keep the pens here. I don't know what I'm allowed to do. I thought that the president was immune from all laws, and it was really true that I could murder people on television and get away with it. I thought I could order immediate, whatever, and muster the troops and have the army march on people who beat me in golf. I really thought that was all of my all the prerogatives of the presidency. Interestingly, by the way, those are things that he thought came with the office, the perks of office. I notice he has no interest in the obligations of office. None of that stuff applies to me. When it comes to obligations that traditionally go with the office, I'm a maverick charting my own course. And when it comes to the perks that traditionally go with the office, like not being able to be indicted while you're sitting president, not to mention the ones that he imagines to go with the office. Those he wants to hold on to. That part of the balance of power he gets to cling to, apparently. So what can you do? He's going crazy again, and we'll all watch it and write articles about it. Greg Dworkin probably has several of them collected right now.
Well, I do.
If they inspire you to get a pitchfork, well, I can't help that. I'm not you.
I like to be inspired in a different way. I'm going to start off with a completely different thing, which is just fun and very, very short.
It's all connected, man.
CJR collects headlines that news people have put together, which aren't necessarily, well, let's just say sometimes it's the summer interns.
All right.
Here's an example. Google News just randomly throws together headlines and pictures, and they don't always match.
Is that right?
This is at the bottom of the list I sent you, but the first one here is a screenshot of Google News showing Indonesia sea monster finally identified, except it's got a picture of Donald Trump next to it.
What?
I mean,
where
that's
is
the kind
this?
of thing that happens.
Okay.
So, right, very, very bottom there.
Very
the
bottom.
lowercase it says headlines editors probably wish they could take back.
Yes, all right. I was like, that doesn't look like a picture of either a squid or Trump, but because it was just the headline.
Right. It was just
there he is. Oh, yeah.
Probably the best one over the summer, though,
Ew,
is MSNBC's Chiron that says Trump worried about Pecker leaking. I think that's just going to be a classic.
That may have been on purpose.
Forever. That one might have been on purpose,
yes.
Or even if it wasn't on purpose, somebody saw it and said, yeah, let it go.
Yes. All right, I've moved on to the next one.
Right.
Wow.
The next one's not so good, but the one right after that caught my attention just because it was so interesting. It's NBC Today.
Yes. You people
what
will
they
not
meant
agree.
to say is Trump lashes out over New York Times report that White House lawyer is cooperating with special counsel. They happened to spell counsel correctly in this particular Chiron.
Okay.
But they left out the word house. So what it reads is Trump lashes out over New York Times report that White lawyer is cooperating with special counsel. And I can understand why Trump would be so upset. I mean,
how
that's
could you
his
do
people.
this to me? You're white. Oh, no.
So I'm going to start the day thinking about that because it puts me in a much better mood.
All right.
Okay. And then somebody tweeted this 1975 headline from the New York Times, which says, anti-busing rider killed by Senate. I think they meant it was some kind of bill. You know, you could tell
We'd
us
like to think so, but
what a rider is. But, you know, the way it reads is, you know, if you didn't like busing,
you didn't pay.
You know, you're done.
Right. Anyway, it says ant-abusing rider.
Ant-abuse, right.
That's the way I read it. Okay. Well, the Senate is constantly killing people.
Stop drinking, right? So.
Wow. Okay. The one we skipped is there for you all to look at.
Modern headlines.
Oh.
You know, we have two big stories here. If you want to look at it, the 20,000 feet picture. Do you want to talk about Trump in the White House, or do you want to talk about elective politics and the Democrats?
I will say that I want to talk about elective politics and the Democrats, because that's the
what you'll
more
say. What do you
noble
really
answer.
want?
I want the other one.
You want the other one? Let's do the other one first.
All right.
So this is a headline in the Washington Post today, which people are making note of. Winter is coming.
All right. Is that show going to be on the air again or what? I'm
Game of
just
Thrones?
complaining out loud. It's like
Aren't
4
they on
years
like the
to.
28th book of the trilogy or something like
So
that?
yeah, he hasn't written it yet, and it takes 15 years to produce an episode. I understand. They need a lot of fur. It's tough work.
Dragons are slow growers. That's just what happens.
That's what it is.
Anyway, so
Yes.
winter is coming. Allies fear Trump isn't prepared for gathering legal storm.
Okay. Yes.
And just
true.
is, McGahn isn't that good anyway.
No.
But he's leaving and he's taking some of his deputies with him, and that leaves like 3 people left in the White House who could, help Trump when impeachment comes. To the
LOL
point
law.
where there's, I don't know if it's in this story or I saw another story that the secretary who was fired for domestic abuse, whose name escapes
Oh
me.
yeah, it's
Or-
like the other. Yeah, not the senator, but same name.
Rob Porter was asked to, fill that McGahn position. Porter said, "I'm not qualified. Don't ask me."
What? To come
This-
back and do that?
I don't even know if it was,
was that?
before he left, but they're just down to bare bones number of people,
Yeah.
and also to the point where Trump was looking over at Kushner's lawyer, Abby Lowell, well known and respected in Washington, and
Yeah.
saying, "I should have that guy. How come you have that guy? I want that guy."
That guy should go on vacation for a long, long time. Leave the country.
Trump is treating other people's lawyers the way he treats other people's wives.
That's true. Thou shalt not
I like
covet.
it. I want it.
Don't covet your
I'm a
neighbor's
star.
lawyer.
Star can do anything.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Just grab him by the briefcase, I guess, and make him your own.
Something like that. So the idea is, of course, that Giuliani can't handle this. And if you're talking about actual real impeachment, it's dawning
Yeah.
on the White House and even Trump, who refers to it as the I word. He says, although Trump sometimes talks about impeachment with his advisors, in other moments he gets mad that the I word, as he calls it, is raised, according to his associates. But it's dawning on him that, you know what, the Democrats may take the House, and if that happens, we're in trouble, and we're not prepared to deal with it. There was that Axios story the other day about the long list of potential investigations that might happen, should be happening now if anybody had actual oversight interest. And again, the gist of it is that Trump is completely and totally woefully unprepared for that, which should be no surprise to anybody because he's completely, totally, and woefully unprepared to be president. But he's also unprepared for what comes next.
Yes.
Hence, winter is coming.
All right. That's good news.
Winter is coming, says one Trump ally in close communication with the White House. So that makes you think it's
Don't listen to anonymous sources.
right. Makes you think it's Trump.
Yeah. Although I don't think he watches that show.
Assuming Democrats win the House, which we all believe is a very strong likelihood, says the article, says this person, the White House will be under siege, but it's like tumbleweeds rolling down the hills over there. Nobody's prepared for war.
I don't know about that, but okay.
But it is dawning on them, is the point, that, they may lose the House, and that might actually have consequences.
That is good. Well, something should have some goddamn consequences.
Right, exactly. Meanwhile,
All right.
Politico says Trump is personally lobbying the GOP senators to flip on Sessions. Opposition to the Attorney General's firing, long seen as a red line by lawmakers, has softened in recent days, but it's really hard to figure out what this all means. In other words, a lot of times, and Lindsey Graham, I think, is particular in this, will say things which clearly are meant to placate Trump and may or may not have anything to do with what actually happens. And it's just impossible these days to separate out which is what. The trouble is you can't play subtle games with Trump. He doesn't understand them. So the best way to deal with him is to say in big, bold letters, no, because that he understands.
Hit him with a newspaper.
But the whole on his nose. But the whole idea that you're going to subtly agree with him while disagreeing or block what he wants to do, but be nice about it. That doesn't work.
Yeah. By the way, the rolled up newspaper thing, I just had a revelation about the Stormy Daniels incident. Finally makes sense.
Ah. You're supposed to slap it on your hand and actually hit people with it.
I know, but I mean, well, that's not what people pay for.
Well, I guess, if you're paying for it, you get to decide what it is, I suppose.
No one ever says, slap your own hand. Ooh,
well,
that's good.
Honestly, I wouldn't know.
I think. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. Who knows? Maybe.
Another piece in the Washington Post, Trump firing Jeff Sessions looks more likely than ever. Here's the storm that awaits.
Yes.
Two main dominoes to fall after Sessions. Trump may pick an acting attorney general, and he would nominate a full-time replacement who would be subject to confirmation.
You should choose an actor.
Acting attorney general could be put in if it's already somebody that's been vetted and okayed by the Senate. I forget how that works.
Matlock.
Like he could move Mick Mulvaney there?
Yeah, sure. He does it all.
Just in theory.
He's like the handyman guy, No job too small.
He fills all positions, right? He wouldn't give up any of his other ones. He would just continue to be CF, the consumer board guy, but also the budget director, but also the acting attorney general. But also, maybe he would slip into Pence's role, and then also he would do what Madison. I don't know how that works.
Just like Carrot Top, you just have a trunk full of props and pretend you're every cabinet secretary.
Right. It's hard to imagine a replacement subject to confirmation would pass without guaranteeing that they wouldn't interfere with the.
But so what?
That's what. But I don't know that you need a full-time replacement. It's the acting one that we're all concerned about.
True, and if what it takes for confirmation is assurances that you won't interfere, you go and give the assurances that you won't interfere, and then when you're in, you interfere.
Go ahead and interfere.
Yeah, I mean, it's a stupid objection. All right.
Yeah, it's the Kavanaugh approach to getting confirmed. Right?
John Roberts.
I'm not going to do anything that's going to upset precedent because this is precedent.
Alito.
Well, does that mean the precedent can't be overturned? Well, I didn't say that.
Yeah. I don't look. Who knows what's going to happen? At that point, you say, I don't answer hypotheticals.
Yeah, I don't answer hypotheticals like what I'm going to do tomorrow. Right. The moment I get there that I've been planning on for the last 6 months.
I don't answer hypotheticals.
So both could conceivably take oversight of Mueller's Russia investigation away from Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. And if they're more loyal, logic suggests they could run interference for Trump or even try to shutter Mueller's probe. But you have to get over a bunch of hurdles. Can Trump pick an acting attorney general? It's not clear. That's an open question because the Federal Vacancies Reform Act allows a president to temporarily replace a cabinet official who's fired as opposed to one who's resigned. If Sessions forces Trump to fire him, then it's not clear that the Federal Vacancies Reform Act applies, and so he could fight that.
Yes, and even if it was clear that it applied, he could still fight it.
Right. So, and that, of course, makes a huge political storm. Now, I think the importance of all of that is recent polling that we have from USA Today. And, in fact, there's a poll that came out yesterday, headline, Michael Cohen's guilty plea raises serious questions about Donald Trump's behavior. And to give you the short story, 40 to 56% disapprove of Trump, and that's 66% independents disapproving. So Trump's approval is only 40%, and this poll is down a few points. If you ask the question, impeach or don't impeach, it's 44% impeach, 47% don't impeach. That's about the same numbers you get from the Civics poll that I follow.
Okay.
And 47% of independents are pro-impeachment in this USA Today Suffolk poll.
What percent?
But more importantly, 55% trust Mueller and 35% trust Trump's denials. So the whole campaign to discredit Mueller basically has failed. He's got his base and nobody else.
Okay. So 47% among independents for impeachment. It's a
50-50 proposition now. The idea being that if more information comes out, that'll switch.
Yeah, 47 impeach and 40
Trump answer
oppose.
Mueller's questions? 63% of the population says yes. Has the swamp been drained? 23% say yes and 57% say no.
Okay. I don't even know why anyone would say yes. I mean, even the people who think he's started must know he's not finished.
Because he can do more wrong. I mean, if
Yeah,
you
I
want to
guess
know the
that's it.
core,
Yeah, that's right.
core of the core, the center
23.
of Trump's base, it's 23%,
guess
which is,
so.
the number that Nixon had when he
That's
resigned.
down from 25.
35, the other 12%,
Yeah.
why you always get 35 as the base, because that 12% will support him so long as it looks like he's winning. They will desert him the moment it looks like he's losing.
Okay. Have they seen the guy? Because he doesn't look like he's winning.
Well, he won the presidency. He's still there. They still think that he can succeed. They are the converts,
I see.
as opposed to the enthusiasts who supported him in the first place. That's the
Okay.
23% core.
What are you building with the Legos? In the back. It sounds like you
Oh,
all the kids
that's
have opened a
that's,
Lego set. All right.
my son's dog is boarding with us while he's on
Ah.
vacation,
Okay.
and that was my wife putting the harness on her, getting her ready to go out and walk. So
All right. What's this dog's name? We have to know.
this dog's name is Saki.
Okay. So we
She's
could
a Shiba
Saki.
Inu. She's adorable.
cool.
She's tiny. She weighs around 15 pounds. She's a little princess.
Cool. Okay. So I don't want to blame all this on Abby.
No, Abby's outside waiting for her.
Yeah. Right. So
Abby goes out by
pleasant.
herself.
She's a
We have
pro at
electric
this point.
fence. And this one needs to be put in a harness because otherwise she would escape.
Yeah, like my kids. Okay.
Yeah, exactly like your kids. So the point of the polling, though, is that Trump is right to worry because as this stuff, it's one thing, media is not necessarily trusted. We all know that. But it's very different when the FBI or the Justice Department or, the legal system in general has specific guilty pleas or guilty verdicts. Those are or indictments that spell everything out. Those are very difficult to ignore. They're very different than hearing headlines on a 6:30 news show that then passes and you didn't really get the gist of the whole thing. That stuff stays out there. It integrates into and seeps into what people think, and it all matters a lot.
I would be happy if that turned out
So
to be
don't
the case.
dismiss. That's my message.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm willing to accept it.
All right. So we have that. And, in general, I was looking at Real Clear Politics this morning. They summarize Trump job approval. And Trump's job approval has been pretty steady since May. On May 7th, it was 43.8 approval. Now it's 43.2. But what's changed is the disapproval. On that same date, the disapproval was 52.7, and that's the one that really fluctuates up and down. Right now it's 53.6 and on the rise. So my advice is forget about the approval. It's kind of fixed for the moment until Mueller comes out with his report. Watch the disapproval, because the disapproval will be the minorly fluctuating part of this. It's pretty steady overall. Other polls out, though. Here's one from Pennsylvania today. New Pennsylvania poll. It's Franklin and Marshall. Double-digit leads for the incumbent Democratic governor and U.S. senator, and a 9-point lead by Democrats in the generic House ballot. So, again, the environment remains fundamentally good for Democrats, and November is just not that far. What's interesting about November not being that far is that we think we all know, that you're not supposed to come down with indictments and news 60 days or so prior to an election. That's like the general rule.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
I think we know what that means.
They accept the general rule. Now, it may or may not be true for Mueller, who's on his own path, because in extraordinary circumstances you do go ahead and do that. Although Mueller's somebody who tends to play by the book. But that's not what I was getting at. What I'm getting at is that this whole question about Tallahassee and the FBI investigating Tallahassee, and Andrew Gillum is running for governor in Florida. Does that rule not apply there? If you're worried about the FBI with indictments and what that means for Gillum, are they not going to do anything for 60 days prior to the election, because that's the general rule?
No, I don't think that was the case for the last Democrat either when it was Menendez.
Right.
So, yeah, that does not apply to, really to anyone at all ever, unless they're in favor with a Republican president.
Well, the thing is, Menendez, was extraordinary circumstances, I suppose.
Yeah.
They thought he was guilty.
Well, that's what they do these things for. Yes.
Right. Now, if Andrew Gillum actually has done something and he's guilty, that's one thing. But the drip drab of innuendo and other stuff, I have a feeling is going to get held up.
Okay.
I mean, if you don't have anything specific, then you wait.
I guess.
You have an
Unless,
indictment,
of course,
maybe you come down with it. But if it's just stuff, I don't know.
Yeah. Unless we begin to see people in the Florida FBI field offices getting fired for no apparent reason, and then we'll see what happens then. It's certainly Trump would be thrilled to death with the opportunity to pressure the FBI to continue its work through the election, whether Gillum's implicated or not. So
I wonder.
We'll see whether he does that.
I wonder how much inoculation there already is to that within the FBI, just because there's so much else stuff going on.
That could be.
But there's a bigger theme there, and that comes to a lot of new faces on the Democratic side running, which is exciting, and everybody's happy about it.
Their whole bodies are running. Yeah.
But Kyle Kondik and Jeff Skelly over at Crystal Ball have pointed out one potential downside, and that's what worries the professional consultants on the Democratic side. Mm-hmm. These folks haven't been vetted, and you don't know what's coming. You don't know what the opposition research is going to show. You don't know what skeletons there are. With the people who have been running for a while, you sort of know that. Mm-hmm. And these are all like, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's out there? Is there anything out there? Is there something out to worry about?
True. It's a point. I mean, of course, we usually find out that the usual suspects have buried skeletons or skeletons in the closet, too. You don't have to bury them if they're already in the closet. But
right.
Yeah,
well, they bury them in the closet, so they're harder to find.
You have to go through the door and start digging.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's a good point, though. We don't know exactly what we're going to get, but it's always one or two in the crowd. All right. We'll continue with this after our break. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com.
I'll send it to you.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I'm getting another gift in the mail here, so follow along on the Crystal Ball report there. The Labor Day status report is what we were working off of there. I'm curious about what we might be able to do with that either later in the show or later in the week. There's a number of stories that it reminds me of, none of which are specifically named, I guess, in the piece, but it's a good jumping off point for a lot of discussion.
Well, one of the things they say, for example, one of the unknowns about this election, future developments in Robert Mueller's investigation, none of which are going to be good for Republicans, by the way.
I doubt it.
The impact of tariffs and trades policy, not going to be good for Republicans, particularly in agriculture-heavy states that otherwise might lean Republican.
Well, they are getting bailouts.
What about Kansas? Republicans, Democrats don't win, but Republicans can lose. So we got Chris Kobach running, and we have tariffs, so you never know. Campaign developments, such as debate mistakes or new opposition research, a big unknown for many Democratic candidates, a good number of whom have not run before. And that's what I was referring to. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's true of course, Republicans.
There's the known unknowns, and then there's the what happens with the FBI Tallahassee investigation, and then there's the unknown unknowns, things we don't even know are going to happen that suddenly explode, like what happened to Elizabeth Esty here in Connecticut. When all of a sudden it turned out she was defending a staffer who was accused of domestic abuse. Mm-hmm. Not good.
No. Well, I think, although I guess the general point is that you don't know what you're getting with people who are unvetted because they've not yet been candidates in the past or didn't hold elective office. It's also quite true that a number of our Republican candidates in a box who have held federal public office for, 2, 4, 6 years are also big question marks and just really have never been vetted before either. And
Actually, on a statewide stage or a national stage.
Right. But they just, sort of floated into office and kept their heads down and didn't do anything in particular and towed the party line, and that was enough to carry them across the finish line. And you sometimes find out 6 years down the road, either as they're running for re-election or stepping up to the next level, or it's just, a different political atmosphere where things, rumors that have swirled about the person in the past locally now resonate nationally because we're finding the same problems over and over in various races. I.e., what I'm hinting at here is the idea of suddenly discovering, or let's say, new credence for evidence that somebody may have connections to racist or white supremacist groups that might have surfaced in the past, but in 2006 that meant something different than having it surface in 2018.
Well, it's not helping Corey Stewart any.
Right. Well, he's still actually banging the drum, so it makes it easy.
Yes, and it's not helping him. So this jumping off point here is the Jeremy Peters article in the New York Times. Democratic embrace of diverse candidates collides with barbed politics of the Trump era. And, of course, we'll get to the DeSantis comments
that
about
means
Gillum.
that the Trump people are racist.
Basically. But Democratic nominees for governor include 3 African Americans, 2 of them in the old Confederacy.
Yeah.
Stacey Abrams in Georgia, and, of course, Andrew Gillum in Florida. And then we have Ben Jealous in Delaware. Maryland, sorry. Maryland.
Yes.
That was basically that not long ago would have been unthinkable. Record numbers of women are competing in congressional races. Elsewhere, Muslims, gays, lesbians, and transgender people will be on the ballot for high-profile offices. And it's interesting that when people who look like you run, it kind of makes you more interested, at least in the election. In this particular situation, there's a great deal of enthusiasm on the Democratic side, and I think it would be a big mistake to assume that it's all because it's anti-Trump. That's not true.
Right.
And so you have people coming out to vote that normally didn't. It happened with Ralph Northam. It happened in Virginia. It happened with Gillum, and that's how he won. He actually excited his constituents and supporters to come out and vote for him.
That's a nice idea.
That bodes well for November. And the idea of running new faces and diverse faces is something that we've talked about for a long time. And now that they're actually doing it, of course, it makes the traditional white centrist political consultants a little nervous because they're not sure what they're getting.
Right.
And that's why they wanted to go with Gwen Graham in Florida, but she wasn't exciting people the way Gillum is.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, it seemed like the not safe pick on Tuesday, and by Thursday, it seems like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, well, good. It should, and the idea that it makes consultants nervous. Well, some people will just be excited just by that.
I mean, Joe Crowley was not happy about losing.
Right.
And the consultants were not happy about Crowley losing because he's a known quantity.
Right.
But Alexandria, Ocasio-Cortez in her district seems like a good fit, and it got people out to vote, and that's how she won. And what's wrong with that? And the answer is nothing. So what happens now is that Republicans look at it and say, well, you don't have the traditional people running. Obviously, we're going to be using that in our negative attack ads. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start by calling everybody socialist. We're going to appoint Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez Queen of Democrats and assume that everybody who's a Democrat like Connor Lamb and Doug Jones and Joe Manchin is an avowed socialist.
Yeah.
And good luck with that and see how that works. And then when that falls flat, then they'll go for the other stuff that they could possibly find that's opposition and negative. And there will be stuff. But the fact of the matter is that on the Democratic side, people are a lot more excited about actually participating in this election. All the stuff that we've talked about in terms of those who are arguing, well, you have to give us candidates that actually motivate the base. in a midterm, that's actually a good strategy. It may or may not work in 2020 in a presidential year, but in a midterm, exciting the base is a good idea.
Well, you would think so, and I guess if people are, how else can you decide it? If people are saying I'm the base and I'm excited, then I guess I would have to take their word for it.
How do you know? Because they come out and vote.
Yeah, that's the ultimate measure of it.
Right, and so the voting on the Democratic side is record levels for a midterm, and so great, that's wonderful. And what happens next? Well, we have to see. I mean, there are forces arrayed against that. You know, for example, Florida is a relatively conservative state. It's not so easy to win with a black progressive. Yes, you can bring out your base, but the other base has sizable people who may come out too. I mean, all of that's true. But the other way of doing it, find the safe centrist and run them, has failed in Florida.
Well, it certainly didn't win in the primary. There's nothing else you can do to.
It hasn't won the last, 4 or 5 gubernatorial races.
All right, then. I don't know. Yeah, I note
different.
For the record that Armando is insisting that this is all nonsense, and I can't really figure out what. But he's also 15, 20 seconds behind us. I'm not sure.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, this isn't something I chose, but that's what happens, and this is what we're going with. Yeah. So, what now? Is Armando saying you just give up and concede the race? That would be not good.
I guess. That's probably not it. I don't know. But while you were discussing
but it's not just Florida. It's other places that you're seeing this. People are excited about coming out and voting for Democratic candidates. Good. Go with the flow.
Yeah. I want to note once again that it's not a problem that's limited to Democrats, nor is it a problem that's really limited to what we would, I guess, define on the surface as new faces. I think it's a continuing problem for Republican incumbents, too. You just find out later. I mean, how long was Scott DeJarle in office before we suddenly found out, wow, he hasn't been vetted at all. He's been sleeping with patients and buying them abortions. What a revelation. I'm sure somebody locally knew that and was like, yes, thanks for catching on 6 years into his incumbency. But,
another argument that could be made is that it's a really good idea on the part of the Democrats to run somebody in every district because stuff like this will come out.
That is true, and you never know when it will happen. And we had a spate of indictments once again just a couple of weeks ago. And if you had, on your bingo card, the various indictments coming down in late August, September of a midterm election year in those 3 districts. I mean, you might have guessed Duncan Hunter, possibly, but I don't know.
Because people have been talking about that one. Yes. But, we'll see. Duncan Hunter still may win.
Yeah, it looks like he will.
It may not be enough in a red area, but again, we'll see. But at least you put that district into play.
Maybe his wife will run against him.
And, the political pundits and consultants and put your finger on the scale evaluators basically are currently calling Florida a toss-up.
Okay.
Probably would have been lean Democrat if Gwen Graham had won. And she was a decent enough candidate, don't get me wrong. But I'm just not sure that she would have been, raising the level of excitement that Gillum clearly is doing.
Okay. Does she keep a detailed diary of everything she does every day?
Well, so now nobody knows.
Okay.
Right? That's what happens. There's not a history, and it's like you don't exist.
Yeah. All the vetting.
Unless you're Hillary Clinton, in which case it's always important that the Chinese get your email, and we have to talk about it every day.
Yes. Well, that didn't go very far.
No, it didn't. A lot of stuff he does doesn't go very far. Another interesting thing here in that regard in terms of diversity is a piece from Kevin Drum that's in Mother Jones today. Chart of the day, Democrats in the white working class. The net percent who lean Democrat among the white working class was about 50-50 up until 2008. Then Obama got elected. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it plummeted.
Oh.
It's a pretty dramatic graph. It's toward the end of the list, but I think you can actually see it just from the link that I showed.
I'll look for something plummeting.
Yeah. Looks like a stock chart.
Okay. Oh.
Net percent who lean Democratic.
There we go. Got it. Net percent who lean Democratic.
Yeah.
Oh, the white working class again. That's Armando's.
Yeah, you've heard of them.
Yeah. I'll see if I can find any.
Right. They apparently didn't like having a black president, and it made him a little nervous.
Well, you know.
Right. They were about evenly split between identifying Democratic and identifying Republican all the way up to 2008. Obama gets elected. Suddenly, the white working class defected to the Republican Party in huge numbers. By 2010, net Democratic ID was minus 12. By 2012, it was minus 14. By 2015, it was minus 22. And by 2016, it was minus 25.
Yes, this even though Obama won.
Yeah, even though Obama won. That's a funny thing. Huh.
Yeah, well, so now I guess that does anybody get concerned about I understand there are probably some white working class folks in Florida. Are they going to do the same thing and just be racist for the next 10, 15 years?
Well, you know,
Or
Trump won
already?
Florida in 2016.
Yeah.
And that was part of it. And they came out in larger numbers than we were expecting, and we were a bit surprised by the result.
Well, they were, I guess.
Now,
I don't think
the question is going to be,
into racist.
do they sour on Trump at some point? And again,
He hates their
the
accents.
core is never going to sour on Trump, but that's not the issue. The issue is, do you get everybody else to outvote them?
Yeah.
And, the polls say you can, but of course you have to put that actually in play. How do you do that? You get candidates that you excite people. Here's another one. Vanity Fair has a nice piece on Beto O'Rourke. It seems like Iowa in 2007, the left's Obama-like answer to Trump in 2020. He hasn't even won his senatorial race yet, and they're already offering up as president.
Oh.
I take a powder. I take a vacation, a holiday,
Yes.
a lacuna on all things 2020. I'm just not interested in it, at least until December.
Okay. Yes. Well, do let him win the race first, if we can.
Or
get that
do well
done.
in the race, or at least have his race.
Yeah. Well. Right. Sure.
I mean, all those things are important. And then finally, before I leave, it's notable that the death toll in Puerto Rico officially now is closer to 3,000 than it was 64. And of interest, Trump thinks he did a fantastic job. I don't know if that's why he thought he did a fantastic job.
Got more than he thought.
Re-averred yesterday, we did a fantastic job in Puerto Rico.
That's right.
He defends his response, and I can't tell whether it's despite the death toll or because of the death toll.
Yeah.
He didn't say.
Right. Well, he hasn't specified. But 9/11 numbers now being posted on this. Good question also why the government of Puerto Rico decided to drag its feet in the way it did in owning up to the numbers.
And to that, I will absolutely, positively defer to Armando, who has much better perspective on that than I do. They just don't seem to be particularly competent.
I guess not, which is only giving cover to the fact that the president is not competent, but he can point and say, hey, if they don't care, I don't care.
Did you see the thread about the phrase monkey it up that was posted on the internet yesterday? This one's by a respectable lawyer.
No, I did not.
That's a phrase that Ron DeSantis used about Andrew Gillum, and it was so egregious and so racist that even Fox News had to disavow.
Yes. Well, it was so obviously racist that I didn't bother reading any threads on it. I didn't need any analysis. But
this one says, I want to talk about the phrase monkey it up because as somebody who managed a car repair shop in Texas, I know what that phrase means.
Really?
A lot of people have been commenting that monkey it up isn't a phrase people say, and it's true. When you Google a phrase and filter out today's news, you won't find much. But you will find a couple of references to the phrase on car repair forums.
All right.
The phrase means messing up a repair set badly because you don't know what you're doing.
Well, I know that's what it means.
Use a couple of examples. It's very, very common in southern repair shops. And importantly, the phrase is first cousin of another more well-known racist phrase using the N-word, ending it up. It has the same meaning. When a redneck auto mechanic scolds a colleague for monkeying something up, it means he did the repair like a black person would do it. The same thing holds true for a far right-wing GOP governor candidate from Florida.
Yes.
Okay?
I'm not
so
paying
if you're
this
curious,
lawyer.
come learn about the origin of related phrases like grease monkey, monkey wrench, and jury rig, which has nothing to do with the courtroom.
Right. Okay.
Right? Let me be clear, he says. I concede you can use the phrase ignorant of its cultural baggage, especially outside the South, and that's how dog whistles work. But in my job, I know what it meant when a white Florida mechanic said, give me this job, not Darnell. He's going to monkey it up.
Yeah.
Right?
Darnell. Okay. I'm not entirely convinced that. Okay, but yes. Well, like I said, I'm not paying the lawyer. It's nice that he said it, but I got the gist of it. I didn't need.
Well, you did, and I think that a lot of people got the gist of it, and that's how come they're so much on the defensive about it. But, what you saw next, of course, is the pushback. Well, you're making it up. You have to read these words literally but not seriously, and so on and so forth, and this and that and everything else. And the fact of the matter is, people took it the way it was meant. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we're starting out the race in Florida. And it really is a clash of cultures here. And unlike other circumstances in other states, this one at least, looks like a pretty clear choice. If anybody ever said to you in 2016, what's the difference? Both parties are the same. And they say that now.
Somebody will.
Somebody will. But, it's just dumb.
Yes.
You couldn't have two more different candidates. And, it's
certainly not in this case.
Not in this case, so you're going to have that. And again, the problem is that Florida is
racist,
the center-right kind of state. So, we'll have to see how it all plays.
Yeah, I guess so. Gee whiz. Well,
if it were Virginia, it would be an easy win for Gillum. But it's not Virginia, it's Florida.
True. Well, maybe there's something we can do about it.
Again, the other side of the coin is, and we talked about this, I think, yesterday, is will enthusiasm for Gillum help Bill Nelson at all? Because that guy could use some enthusiasm.
Well, he could. We could just give it to him like this.
Thank you. I needed that.
What?
Enthusiasm.
Oh, that.
Enthusiasm.
Okay. Well, anyway, I hope so. I don't know how much of it really transfers, but
well, if you come out to vote
there,
versus not coming out to vote, that's where the transfer is.
I mean, what they need is, I think
I'm
obviously
there anyway,
the
might as well
ultimate
vote
medium
for
is
Nelson.
right, and that's how the ultimate medium being yard signs. That's what the yard sign should say. You're already there, you might as well.
If I ever ran, I think that would be my platform. You're already there, you might as well vote for me.
Right? Why not? I think that would right. Yeah, right. That's a great sign. You're already there. You might as well. Nelson for Senate. That's perfect. I think it'll probably work.
Right.
It's the best you can hope for.
If you lived here, it'd be easier for you to vote.
Yeah, right. You'd already be voting. Yeah,
exactly right. All right, I'm going to leave you with those thoughts. Maybe Armando can come on a little bit later, tell everybody why I'm wrong. There's always a reason, but also give us a little more insight into both Florida and Puerto Rico here, because I think those are both important issues. Take care, and I will talk to you on Monday.
Monday is Labor Day, and I'm not certain whether we'll labor or not. It's not really that much of a chore. But it should be an exciting. We will see. We'll play it by ear, and by which I mean I will tell you on Monday at 8:50 what we're doing. I have to decide before that.
What's going on? As I normally do.
Yeah, we'll figure it out, and it's. I guess it'll depend largely on what's going on in this house for the weekend and whose dogs we're babysitting.
Right, as everybody can hear, David and I have very formal HR policies in place about this at Kagro World Headquarters in terms of how this works.
I'm taking it out of your paycheck. Don't fool yourself.
Absolutely. Take care, and I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Greg. I know we'll talk next week. We just don't know when.
That's the way I left it. I thought that was
open-ended.
Open-ended.
Quite true. All right. So now is the point. What we should have done is we should have had Greg predict that Armando would come on the show and tell everyone why Greg was wrong, and then just to show that Greg was wrong, Armando wouldn't come on the show. But I would prefer that he do show up, so maybe in that sense. And he's not afraid of being, let's say, I was going to say proven wrong, but that's not always the case, but certainly accused of being wrong by Armando. So we could have gone the other direction with that one. Armando, I'll leave the door open because I'm curious too what it was that we were talking nonsense on. We might as well find out. I have a guess that we're going to end up all on the same page once again anyway, but if not, fine. He can't answer you until at least Monday and maybe not until Wednesday. It's an excellent opportunity for you to come on and explain everything. All right, I'm done with Respectable Lawyer. It's an interesting perspective. I'm glad I found out that there's some, I don't know, like whether it's really that's strongly tied to car repair shops, but I assume it happens in many places. But basically, we found out that somebody has heard the phrase. Fine. It's not a phrase that gets used where I'm from, certainly not around me anyway, but I know exactly what he was talking about. Nobody needed to explain it to me. I didn't want to play dumb and say, gee whiz, I mean, clearly there could be this reference because they used the word monkey and everybody knows what the reference is, but I got it. And there were 5, 6 takes on it that, might have had something worth saying. There are probably thousands of patiently explaining to me the racist undertones of it. I get it. I know what that's about. I know enough not to say stuff like that on purpose, certainly. I mean, what's interesting about this thread is it makes mention of the fact that sometimes you do make dumb little mistakes that not everybody would make, but I could understand, older people in particular, but older white people, for instance, playing around with a bunch of kids who are climbing on jungle gyms, and you say, "Oh, you're climbing like you're climbing like a little monkey," and then you realize, "Oh my gosh, I wasn't paying attention to the fact that I might be talking about a black child here, and you can't do that." And hopefully everybody is attuned to how you've said things and what kind of person you are, and if you're, kind of established as a genuine and kind and decent person, they will understand that that was a mistake. However, if you are a Republican office holder who has held office for many years by virtue of the fact that you have manipulated racist dog whistles all your life, then they will know what you are doing there too. Well, if you find yourself in a position of being an older or otherwise well, I don't know what to say. If you find yourself accidentally using the term, be prepared to say, I really apologize. I did not mean for it to come out like that. I can understand why you might be upset. And I suppose then you have to make room for people to be upset, and hopefully they'll be less upset with you than if you try to actually your way out of it, or assert that really means something else in some other culture, as George Allen did with macaca moment. That was pretty bizarre, although a lot of people were wondering whether he was upset with himself for not waiting until 2018 to be openly racist, when allegedly you could now get away with it as a Trumpster. I don't know. It still probably wouldn't work in Virginia, but it's a better environment. He could what about his way out of it and say, well, what about the other extreme racists, not only elsewhere, but here in Virginia? And maybe he would get away with it that way. All right, let's see. Catching up with the news. Once again, another mention of the fact that Don McGahn will be leaving his job. We did mention it. Greg made mention of it yesterday, and it got a lot of attention during the day. Now a point of controversy and contention with Donald Trump, and I missed whatever it was he was referring to, and maybe it's in this article. I have Robert Costa's piece here for the Post, along with Robert Barnes and Rosalind Helderman. Trump says White House counsel Donald McGahn will leave his job in the fall. And I don't know whether it's this article that he's referring to when Trump was tweeting that it was all made up fake news that Jared and Ivanka somehow forced McGahn out. I'll perhaps skim through the article and find out if that's where that comes from. But this report came out, and along with a couple of tweets discussing it, that read the piece to mean that, it wasn't an amicable split. Yesterday's first reports were that McGahn was leaving, but sought to sort of portray it like, that he was opting out. And people speculated, given that he's been talking to the special counsel, he may be trying to sort of salvage his future career and job prospects by distancing himself from the Trump administration. But I guess by late afternoon yesterday, it was more along the lines of, no, Trump read in a newspaper that you were speaking to the special counsel and has fired you. Because apparently Word that McGahn was leaving his job in the fall first came from Trump, and McGahn had not yet heard that that was the case, if I read this correctly. This posted yesterday at 6:39 p.m., not 6:38 and not 6:40. White House counsel Donald McGahn, who has led the Trump administration's effort to reshape the judiciary, which they've done, while confronting turmoil in the West Wing surrounding the ongoing special counsel probe, will leave his post in the coming weeks. President Trump announced Wednesday. The exit of McGahn, a low-key 50-year-old lawyer who has been at Trump's side since the early days of the campaign, come at a fragile moment inside the White House amid escalating tensions between the president and the Department of Justice in recent weeks. McGahn, who has deep ties in Washington's legal community, has long functioned as Trump's liaison to justice officials in Congress. He's frequently played the informal role of peacemaker, as special counsel Robert Mueller and his team have pursued interviews, including with McGahn, and documents from the White House and White House officials as part of their investigation into, guess what, Russian interference in the 2016 presidential campaign. We have to say it every time, apparently. White House counsel Don McGahn will be leaving his position in the fall, shortly after the confirmation, parenthetically, hopefully, I say hopefully not, but of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court. Trump wrote on Twitter, "I have worked with Don for a long time and truly appreciate his service. But Trump's announcement, as it turns out, Trump's announcement of McGahn's departure came as a surprise, including to McGahn." So that's how do you like to find out you're fired via Twitter? Because he loves firing people. He's not afraid of confrontation. He's a tough negotiator. He loves to fire people in absentia, but he does everything in absentia. So there you go. He was not aware that Trump planned to send the tweet, according to a person close to McGahn, who was not authorized to speak publicly. Those anonymous sources, you can't believe them. I was the source. We'll be back after 1 minute. Hey, Armando. How you doing?
Hey.
We're in our end of our break here, but we'll let everybody know you're on and when we come back out.
Okay.
All right. Unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, I just, because Greg's entire analysis report was absolutely absurd.
All right. Hold on a
It
second.
literally was ignorant as anything you'd hear Chuck Todd say. That's high insult for me. But I don't know why you started talking about it that way.
All right. Well,
wrong.
Welcome back to the show, Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And as you can hear, Armando joined us during the break. We do have to get to the bottom of exactly what was wrong with the analysis or whatever. But it's interesting you put there. What Greg said was as wrong as anything Chuck Todd says. So there you go, Greg. After you retire from medicine, $1 million a year on NBC. Look forward to it.
Yeah, exactly. And
I don't know if it's
but
really
of course,
$1 million.
Chuck Todd is not a college graduate, so
Yeah, really?
I think Greg is overqualified.
That could be the case. Now, that's not hard to believe. Chuck Todd was that's not what I mean. He's a smart enough guy. Chuck
No,
Todd.
he's smart enough, and you don't
uh,
need to have college. He's not stupid because he didn't graduate from college.
No.
I threw that in.
Is
as
that
a
true though? I
gratuitous
mean,
insult,
I pointed it out just because I knew Chuck Todd when I thought he was in college and he was working he was doing an internship at the hotline.
Yes.
And we were there at the same time in 1992, and everybody knew that he was there as an intern, and we assumed that meant for credit while attending college, and it may very well be the case. It's just that, he may have been in the middle of it, and certainly his career in journalism took off very quickly because he was very involved in working in the hotline and made it clear that he wanted to be in political journalism, and he was doing a great job there. And he may have just said, yeah, the degree isn't going to change much.
And he's right.
If I do that, yeah.
I don't think if he finished his last quarter or semester, it would have changed the thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that don't need to do that for what they want to do. Like Bill Gates, right? He didn't finish, did he?
Yeah, he did not graduate from Harvard.
Yeah,
Good
so
point.
Right, you find out very quickly if there's a career path for you, and when you find it, you take it.
Yeah, I mean, college is college, but anyway, enough.
Yeah.
Let's get back to why Greg is
Stay in
wrong.
school, kids. Yeah.
Exactly. And stay off drugs.
In school.
Greg is wrong because his interpretation of the Florida result is absurd.
Okay.
But let's
remind us
start
what
with
we're
the
doing.
actual result. It's a 2-point win.
So drawing a big conclusion from it is unwarranted.
Yeah, people always overinterpret what a result means.
Well, a win is adds 10
You
points.
win,
The camera
but-
adds 10 pounds, and a win adds 10 points.
Well, but let me ask Greg this: if the result had
can't.
been just 2 points in the other direction,
She would have been
would it
genius.
mean that everything he just said was wrong?
Yes. I think
So you're telling me 40,000 votes, one way or the other, is the basis of his analysis?
I don't think
just
it's
absurd.
his analysis per se. But I do think it's a mistaken assumption that a lot of people make very frequently. It's true, and I think he'd probably say, "Yeah, that's true," because we have said in the past that take away Wisconsin and its blip on the radar, and Hillary Clinton's campaign was genius.
But Greg just engaged in that very
I guess
same
that
fallacy.
could be true.
That's number one that was wrong with what he did. Number two, he doesn't even engage the actual facts of the election. The Florida, remember what this huge win by Andrew Gillum, it's not only by 2 points, he got a third of the vote. 1/3. Because it was a multi-candidate race with no runoff.
Yeah, so I guess you can say, all right, well, a win was engineered, and that's a good thing for the strategists. But yeah, okay, well, countervailing point here. But of course, the same things were said for a while about, or still frequently get said about Bill Clinton's win because yada yada. No. But this is at
Bill
least
Clinton
not
was
cross
in a
parties.
three-person race, and the question there was how would the pro vote split?
Yes.
So really, that's what that argument's about. Oh, well, he took all the votes from Bush or something like that.
Right.
The polling afterwards said it did and it did, but that's actually a legitimate argument. And you could have this argument, well, how would Gillum have done with the Levine voter? Levine was a candidate. He's the former mayor of Miami Beach. He ran for governor. He spent a lot of money. He got 20% of the vote.
Mm-hmm.
If he loses the Levine voters 17-13, he loses. And we're not here talking about, wow, this proves everything.
That is a valid point.
But there's no runoff in Florida.
Right.
There's no runoff in Florida, which it's kind of weird, but it is what it is. And the rules are what they are. Then there was this fellow, Jeff Green, who you also have to take into account in this race. He got around 11 points, 11%. But his impact was different than just that 11%, though you do have to take that into account.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is a billionaire. He's the Mar-a-Lago guy who pretended he got into a fight with Trump. But he actually said, let's rally around Trump. Anyway, he's this goofball. He's always throwing millions of dollars into these races. It's now the second time he's done it and monkeyed a race.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, you see how I did that. And Jeff Green is white, so I can say that. Okay. And he basically just threw negative ads and information at what were then perceived as two front runners, Graham and Levine. That has an impact as well. The final impact is Gillum was under the radar the whole time. No one ever laid a glove on him. Frankly, the press didn't really cover him as a serious candidate, which is a negative for him, of course, but also a positive. He did not get attacked at all. It was a perfect storm of things, and he won. Congratulations. We all need to rally around him, and let's go. But let's not pretend you've now learned the secret to the midterms because of a candidate who won a third of the vote and won by 40,000 votes out of 1.5 million cast.
All right, I get it. It sounds like a valid counterpoint. True, and maybe it would have been. Maybe it was more of a rallying around the candidate kind of a comment, or saying at least let's not let stand the the conventional wisdom that says, oh, well, everybody needs to be afraid. All Democratic candidates are unknown quantities, and you're going to find skeletons in their closet. You don't really necessarily have to worry that much about that. And, of course, I point out it's true of Republicans and known quantities as well. So, maybe it's more of a rallying comment than anything else. But it's a mistake that lots of people make all the time on all parts of the political spectrum. But I think we're well served to remind ourselves, yeah, actually, it may be true that a few votes this way and that way, and we'd have an entirely different narrative.
Exactly.
Or maybe all narratives are garbage.
And in 60-some days, when we have the general election, if he loses by 40,000 votes, does that prove that we should never nominate a candidate like Gillum? No,
right, yeah,
of course it doesn't. It's just a close loss. I mean, people, it's over.
We do need to consider that.
It's just insanity that people say, oh, well, this result proves. I also heard him talking about Ocasio-Cortez. And I didn't understand what he meant by that. It's not like Joe Crowley was going to lose the general election, and she's not either. And, she won by a few thousand votes. Crowley was a lousy candidate. Congratulations. You won a race. There's 800,000 of these races. They don't all mean everything. And you can't just go, oh, well, this now means. And now, now this means. It's just silliness. It was silly when Bill Scherer wrote the stupid, well, look, the socialists are losing all the races.
Yeah, and I think the comment about Ocasio-Cortez's race was much more along the lines of here's another person that people think is an unknown quantity, and so pundits are running around saying things are happening.
Yeah,
and that's right.
Fine.
So that's
and
all
you know what? It's
offering.
up to Joe Crowley if he's feeling threatened to make her a known quantity and run a campaign against her.
Yes.
That's what elections are. We put the people out there. We look at it. You try to convince enough people to vote. Look, Gillum won. I was for Graham, full disclosure, because I thought she's a good candidate and, frankly, had the best chance to win in November. I still believe that. But it doesn't matter now. Gillum's the candidate. We are going to fight as hard as we can to get Gillum across the line and win this election. It's too important for these stupid discussions as well.
Well, having opened up the results, I am curious now. Let's talk about John Weatherby. Is it,
right.
I don't know who that is. I think he was the principal of Archie's High School, Riverdale High.
John Weatherby was just some guy. Luckily, we didn't get De La Fuente on our side. De La Fuente decided, the crazy guy who runs for every office.
Oh, you have one, do you?
Yeah,
okay.
He ran for president, and he runs for Senate, and he's always on. I forget what the hell his party name is, but he's got a party.
Okay.
And he ran for governor for the Republican nomination for governor against Rick Scott, and actually got like 200,000 votes.
Oh, well, there's always one somewhere. You tend to forget them, but yeah, I guess as if there's enough in there. So,
how come nobody's praising his campaign?
I don't know.
That was an impressive performance.
Right. Lundy Lundmark.
What does it mean?
With 8,636 votes.
Yep.
Could have made the difference. I don't know who that is, but okay. Well,
I'm
clearly
just
they had
getting
no
it.
impact.
Maybe I'm being a little harsh on Greg, but I hate to see Greg fall into that.
Well, it's a good reminder
trope.
that we know it, and then we've heard him say it, and I'm sure that he would say, "Oh yeah, that's right. We've said that before about the Hillary Clinton campaign in the general election. 80,000 votes go the other way, and she's a genius." But
I think
of
there's
course,
actually
3 million
lesson.
votes went the other way.
There are some different analysis that I would apply to people who consider themselves more left-wing insurgent candidates who want to win primaries in the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a few of the lessons. Florida has a closed primary. You have to be a registered Democrat.
Okay.
Number 2, Florida has three main components to its, and this is a broad brush and a little too much, but I'm going to do it anyway. You have white progressives, mostly in the Southeast. You have the African-American vote, which is by and large a third of the Democratic primary electorate. And then you have more centrist, blah, 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 more establishment type of Democratic voter.
Okay.
And what happened was that Gillum very shrewdly, his campaign did a couple of things very shrewdly. They got a couple of billionaires to give him money. Tom Steyer, who gave him about $4 million, and George Soros, who gave him about $3 million.
Oh, my God. Wait a minute. George Soros. Help. All right.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, just so you know, that's part of the story of the Gillum supposed less money. He didn't have that much less money at all. He just didn't have it in his campaign. They were put through PACs and stuff. He also had a dark money super PAC that also went after Graham as well. So basically, that's another lesson you have to learn. Forget all the small dollar nonsense, because it was nothing to do with small dollars for Gillum. It was big dollars from big, rich people.
Well, that is a popular and successful technique for winning campaigns.
It is. And what
true.
I'm saying is, for an insurgent left-wing campaign, you need to find yourself your sugar daddy billionaire who's going to give you a lot of money. That really helps.
It does happen. It's been interesting watching the insurgent candidates. And I guess it's funny that same. I was just wondering whether maybe the same discoveries that centrist, nervous Nelly pundits see as, oh my God, skeleton in the closet, is actually, us discovering that, there's complexities and nuance to everything, and no candidate is perfect or ideal. And by which I mean, not that they don't make mistakes, but don't set yourself up, with hero worship. You will find, oh my God. So as people learned over the weekend, the ultra liberal supporters of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who freaked out over the weekend when she said something nice about McCain after he died. That sort of thing. Like, she's going to say a decent thing about somebody in order to not be a petty a-hole in the middle of an election campaign.
If you want to be completely cynical, it's good politics for her to do that.
Right. So, but of course, others who are like, oh, she was the avatar for everything progressive and bold that maybe she's not all things to all people or even to you. She'll still have those policies. That's what you said mattered, right? You're going to come back, aren't you?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
And this goes to the other point. There are people who are trying to downplay the role Bernie Sanders had in Gillum's win. They're wrong. That was a very important part of Gillum's strategy. He consolidated and energized the Sanders voter in Florida to go for Gillum. That was huge. If he doesn't get that, he doesn't win, period.
Okay. Then good test for the Bernie Sanders general election forces.
So what Gillum did was he consolidated the black vote.
Yeah.
He got the bulk of the white progressive vote. That added up to a little over a third. He won by 2 points. It was very shrewd campaign. Those guys did great. They got lucky, very lucky. But that's part of it. You need to be prepared to take advantage of luck when it comes your way.
Yes, and that's what makes you, successful as in anything. Good job, good work on that. It's been interesting watching the back and forth on that because it's been so interesting. This is all catch up for me. I have not paid attention to that.
Obviously, race. I lived this campaign for the last year, and
that's why we have you here.
It was a tough swallow for me. I'm close to the people who ran her campaign. I think she's a terrific person. You lose. You got to move on, and you rally around. That's another part of the lesson I hope people will take.
Yes, don't take your ball and go home if your primary candidate loses. I mean, there are lots of people who do that. And it's been fascinating watching the last couple of days and catching up on all of it and watching people say, oh, come on, Bernie Sanders supporters, he adopted the Bernie platform, so he won. So it's a big endorsement for the Bernie platform. And then people pushing back and saying, but he was a delegate for Hillary. It's a Hillary person, to which I was saying, wow, that sounds like a good idea to take your Hillary connections and your Bernie connections and meld them together and win the primary.
Stacey
Wouldn't that be a
Abrams
good
did the
thing?
same in Georgia, but she was the front runner the whole time, so she was a target, and it was a two-person race. I think Stacey Abrams' win is more impressive as a mandate of what people want, but in terms of political shrewdness, I give the Gillum campaign a lot of credit.
Yeah, well, good. I think
They had a
it.
narrow path, and they did everything right to get it.
That's sort of like step one to succeeding in winning office and succeeding when in office. So that's a good. It's a good demonstration.
Sign. It's a very good sign. And it'll be interesting to see now the general election. This is going to piss some of the Bernie people off, but Bernie is just going to be de-emphasized now in the general. That's just going to be the case.
But that's
Gillum has to push Bernie to the back. He'll be there. He's not going to denounce him or say I don't know who he is.
Him, right? Yeah, I mean,
but he's not going to be front and center. He's simply this is not a Bernie. Is this after now? Bernie campaign idea is done. It's not going to happen.
Okay.
I'm actually very curious how the Bernie people are going to react to the fact.
Yes, that will be interesting, and hopefully we can, whisper to him. If you're a Bernie woulda won person, you need to imagine how Bernie would have won. And of course, in their minds, it would be by being so boldly progressive that no one could deny the sheer force of his, whereas the reality would have been, well, now I need to play it to the center and make sure that people who are prepared to panic because socialisms don't panic so that they vote for me and I win. Okay.
That's correct.
And in fact, but Bernie would never have done
Chuck
that.
Todd thing, and you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. In a way, I understand how stupid the question was from Chuck Todd because it's a stupid question, but it was a good moment for Gillum.
I wish I had more of the clip. I would love to know exactly how he phrased the question. Was it like, what do you say to people who say, hey, that guy's a socialist? Or was it, hey, how come you're such a socialist?
I don't have it in front of me, but I thought you just asked him if he was a socialist. And Gillum said, I'm not a socialist, I'm a Democrat. Right? And perfect, yes, because there's no pejorative to being called a socialist. He doesn't take it as one. Mm-hmm. He just says, that's not what I am. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Democrat.
Yes, well.
It's a great answer because he doesn't say, well, there's nothing wrong with being a socialist, but I'm a Democrat.
Yeah.
The thing that Jealous, when confronted with similar questions in Maryland, been jealous. On another of our candidates, African-American candidates for governor, we have 3, by the way, which is amazing, and congratulations to the Democratic Party, yet again showing that we are the true party of tolerance, diversity, etc. Jealous, insisted he was a venture capitalist, and of course he's not a socialist, and he sort of pissed off his base a little bit. The Bernie, because he is very much a Bernie candidate and always marketed himself as that. And they got upset with it. And of course, he's losing to Hogan, but that's a tough race. I just don't know who could have won that race anyway. I hope Ben can come back and get in it. I just think it's a tough spot.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, well taken. That why the defensiveness and to run for a defense, in front of your Bernie Sanders base. No, I'm not. I'm a vulture capitalist. I love killing people's jobs and stealing their money.
Yeah, the fact is, when he called himself a venture capitalist,
that's not good.
He raises money for small businesses.
Yeah. I mean, that's
particularly
minority-owned
businesses. But he ran away so hard from socialism.
I can see that.
He ran himself into a different problem.
All right. Well, sometimes you lose it on the spot.
Yeah,
or
you do.
overdo it.
I'm sure he was frustrated with the question. He's trying to run a campaign about issues that really matter to the people of Maryland, and he's getting these stupid socialism questions.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, when you decide that democratic socialism is what you're going to hang your hat on, you're going to get the questions.
Yeah.
I think it's a meaningless slogan. I don't think there are any actual socialists in the United States. There's nobody who wants to abolish capital or transfer the means of production to the government.
Is that even
but
socialism? People
like to pretend they're going to be socialists. They're going to get asked socialist questions.
Yes, but I suppose if you depend on that for its provocativeness, then
exactly
you get those questions.
But there literally are no socialists. Well, as the term is understood by the electorate. I fight with Nathan Newman about this all the time. He means, well, the democratic socialism doesn't mean that. It means
I don't know.
Communal ownership, which means regulation. And, there's this whole long explanation for why socialism doesn't mean what people think socialism means. And I said, if it doesn't mean it, then why do you want to use that word? Just call yourself something else.
Yeah, I mean, we went through that when liberal was turned into a bad word. Everybody ran to, I'm not that, I'm progressive. Okay.
In fact, the Bernie wing likes to try to reimpose liberal on the rest of us, which is
I don't mind.
I'm not afraid of being called liberal now anymore. I think it's been so long now that it doesn't mean anything. But I don't think under any traditional definition am I a liberal. I am a left center, free capitalist, free trader. Okay. So I'm on economics. I'm probably to the right part of our party, but that doesn't mean I'm a neoliberal, which is what they like to call me because it doesn't actually describe what I am. But at any rate, the point is, don't get bogged down in labels, and don't get bogged down on whether Gillum is a Bernie candidate or a different kind of candidate. He's a Democrat. He's the Democratic nominee for one of the most important governorships in the country. This is probably, after all the Senate races and all the House races, the most important race in the country, because gerrymandering, controlling the districting of Florida, which has 27 will have 29 House seats after 2020, is one of the most important jobs you'll have. We need a Democratic governor for any number of reasons nationally. But, of course, as someone who is in Florida all the time, as a Floridian, I need someone who's actually going to address the problems of Florida, as opposed to the guy who stole billions of dollars from Medicare type. Or, of course, now you have Trump, basically, mini Trump. Ron DeSantis has the choice. So this is a critical election for us Floridians. Please respect the rest of the country, because we're not going to be your Bernie Hillary fight. Please stop. We need to win this contest. We don't need you to prove a point.
I think, a point well taken there, and I hope we can avoid it. So many people have so much. I don't know. Pin it on another election, on the one we're going to win, I guess. You started out pinning it all on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she's
Keep
worthy
it
of doing.
That's
Keep
your
doing
race. That'll prove the efficacy of your role. You get Ocasio in the general election. That's how you can prove that you're right.
And there, it's a much better call too. I mean, you stand on much firmer ground. That was just
win.
grassroots
and you can
organizing and winning.
And that'll be that.
And you'll be right too. I mean, there's no reason why you should have been able to pull that off, but for saying, look, this is going to be a low turnout thing. If we can get people that go to DSA meetings to come and vote, we will win. That's the way it's supposed to work. Let's do it. And they did it. So,
great.
Yeah. Awesome.
Let's go do it.
That proves the point. Stick to that one, I guess. And all right. Well,
and then how about this? How about you take the credit for Bernie after Gillum wins the general election?
I guess if you could do that, that would be helpful too. Right.
You can wait till the day after. In fact, you're probably safer, because if you're claiming him and he loses, then everybody's going to blame you.
That's true too.
So you can have your cake and eat it too. Just wait till after the election to claim the win.
Okay. Well, finish baking the cake.
Exactly.
All right.
All right, David.
Excellent.
I ranted enough. And
People loved it.
I proved with geometric certainty that Greg is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I got him with the strawberries.
All right. Excellent.
You don't know my reference, but maybe somebody knows. Tame Mutiny. I got a little crazy there.
Yeah, that comes up quite a lot. All right. Thanks very much, Armando. People love an Armando rant. It is said on Twitter, and if it's said on Twitter, it has to be true. All right. Let's see. This is interesting. I want to at least note for the record that something we mentioned yesterday, also, as with everything, generating a little bit of controversy. Some people we like who say yes, and some people we like who say no. The story of Selena Zito and her fabulism continues, and there's yet more publications on the subject today. But I want to bring up and point out for the record that not everyone who you may know and like and follow on Twitter and elsewhere, like for instance Alex Parker, is buying into the idea that Selena Zito absolutely positively made it all up. And I go, there you go. Unacceptable. Well, not the music I was looking for, but just as much fun. Let's see, and that even isn't the music that I was looking for, but we'll use it to exit from the show for just a minute anyway, and we might as well just throw in another unacceptable, because this... that is not how this works! That's exactly right. We've got it all wrong, and and it's turned off the music as well, and so now things are really screwed up. So let's try this, and then exit for 2 minutes and be back. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching Kagro X or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Let's jump in here in this quiet portion of the music then, and welcome you back to the show. It's Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, and we have a million different pieces of tape running. We had our technical difficulties. We're gonna have this music. Maybe we can fade this out. And we can only apologize for the technical difficulties that come from realizing at the last second that you're due for a break and grabbing the mouse with a little extra gusto so that whatever other sound effects you happen to be hovering over at the time with your mouse start to play instead. We have things we haven't used in quite some time, but it's true, we screwed it up.
Wrong, sir. Wrong.
Exactly. We did all the wrong things. Did we exit the show correctly? No, we didn't. And then we had to ask ourselves,
What the hell is supposed to do, you moron?
And the only thing you could do at that point is play some music and hope that it works out from there. All right. So as I was saying before we disappeared for the break, I love stories that are nuanced enough that I can't, I think I hate them, but I have a love-hate relationship with stories that I can't tell what the hell's going on here or which side to take on this. We learned the other day, in reading one of the tweet storms that Greg found about Selena Zito, that someone, anyway, was making what appeared to be ironclad claims about her having made up all sorts of crap for her book and being a serial fabulist. And Alex Parker, who many of you may follow along with me on Twitter, and who describes himself currently as the tax-splainer for Law 360, though I don't know where he's written along the way, but usually a pretty reliable and level-headed analyst of the stories I find lately taking a real contrarian role in first his staunch insistence that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's campaigns having excluded or wanted to exclude media from that town hall meeting. Lots of journalists took that as a serious threat to the freedom and independence of journalism in this country. And they had a point in the sense that, Yeah, ordinarily town hall meetings are considered kind of open to the public, and that would then be, it was a campaign event. You'd see those things covered by media very frequently. But then by the time things broke down over it, the candidate offering an explanation saying, look, we were talking about some sensitive issues, particularly with respect to immigration, and there are residents of the district who are concerned about their own immigration status and wanted to be able to speak freely without fear of being exposed in the press, because, of course, these days, if you are exposed in the press as either being undocumented in the country, or, for that matter, that's another story now circulating, having all the documentation you could possibly need to prove your citizenship, but simply being brown enough to have your citizenship questioned by a birther president, you may find ICE on your doorstep anyway. And my first reaction is, hey, that's a good point. I hadn't considered that. Maybe that is something that requires or deserves some protection. But then the pushback of, well, then you shouldn't have called it a public event. You should have called it a private event. And it seemed to me like things were settling down at that point. And I thought, okay, good point there too. Perhaps you labeled the event wrong. That seems like a petty complaint in the grand scheme of things, but there's a good point in there somewhere. Label your events correctly, and then you won't have any problems. And if we're at the point now where if you had done the exact same event but labeled it private, and that would have at least satisfied some of the sticklers among the media, then I guess we've really solved the issue. Okay, it should have been labeled differently. Perhaps we can convince her to label things differently in the future if she should want to do the same thing. But if that would satisfy you, then it seems like we have not very much disagreement on the substance of what went on, and we can move on. But Alex Parker was having none of that. This was still a major First Amendment infraction for him, and he could not be satisfied with any explanation. And he was, and for some time he went on saying, sort of like subtweeting the entirety of Twitter, saying, can't believe how many defenders of the Ocasio-Cortez event I'm seeing. And it was like, I don't really understand why you can't get to the place where you're like, yeah, that was mislabeled and she's an inexperienced candidate, and hopefully this experience will inform her going forward. What's the problem with that? But he insisted that there was more to it, and I'm sure he had a substantive argument behind it. I just didn't agree with it. And we weren't going to meet on that one. And now I find him on the other side of the Selena Zito episode, insisting yesterday that the claims of fabulism were in fact fabulism themselves, and that most of the claims were, I guess, basically were selective enough in quoting from her book that they demonstrated a certain disingenuousness of their own. Now, he is currently, I just saw him pop up on the screen because he was tweeting how disheartening this whole episode was, because he had attached the Huffington Post piece from Ashley Feinberg, who's another person I think we all typically are fans of, writing a piece called "Take Selena Zito Neither Seriously Nor Literally on Trump Voters." Subheader, "Is the populist whisperer of Trump country full of crap?" And that was the basic premise of the question yesterday. And I've been entertaining the possibility that it's all true and that she was a gigantic fabulist, and I still will entertain the possibility. Alex Parker has different things to say. I thought we'd bring that up, but it's entirely possible for that to be true and for her to have written this book. Honestly, here's a good parallel, I think. Although every time I think I'm drawing a good parallel or good analogy, my family begs to differ. And they don't even really have to beg. They just jump right in and differ. But just as a different narrative would emerge from a campaign like in Florida, had Gwen Graham won. Or, his Gilliam's strategy was terrible. He lost. but it was a close election. Or he wins a close one. Oh, he's a genius, and he's he's a populist whisperer himself, or whatever. I think it was a solid gamble, it turns out, but it may just have been nothing more than a gamble. Write a book claiming that there's this secret movement afoot to accept Donald Trump as some sort of right-wing populist savior. And look, if Donald Trump loses the election as everybody expects he would, the book dies in obscurity and it's sold off in a bargain basement bin, and nothing happens one way or the other to Selena Zito's career. But if you roll the dice on this thing, whether you believe that he was secretly going to win or not, and he wins, then you're a Trump whisperer. You're a genius. You teased out the counter narrative here that turned out to be true, and you're one of only a few people do it. So it either could be the case that this book was honestly reported or not, but or that she honestly believed that Trump was going to pull it off. I can't really speak to that, but certainly, there's nothing to be lost in writing the book that she wrote. You weren't going to have your career crushed either way. And if you happen to pick the long shot and win, it's a big payoff. You're a genius. But 80,000 votes go the other way, and she's a moron. But, that never hurts anybody in book publishing. So anyway, Ashley Feinberg has taken this piece up, and I think she takes the same tack as the tweet thread we were reading yesterday. But just to be sure, I'm going to double check here and do it live on the air. She writes, you might not know who Selena Zito is off the top of your head. I certainly didn't, but you're almost certainly familiar with her work. She writes in publications such as the New York Post and the Washington Examiner about such varied topics as, quote, why Democrats in Western Pennsylvania are voting Trump, why the generation after millennials will vote Republican, and why the Rust Belt just gave Donald Trump a hero's welcome. Or maybe you read her September 2016 piece in The Atlantic, in which she famously pointed out that Donald Trump supporters took the candidate seriously, not literally. That's where that comes from. While the national press did the reverse. Seriously, not literally. A nice phrase and a bit of a conjuring trick. It flipped around the usual dynamics of our political culture. The voters had wised up beyond any care for truth, and the simple-minded media were being played for suckers. The observation hasn't held up well. Trump has literally done what he literally said he would do, but analytical rigor wasn't really the point. This was about excusing Trump voters, part of the media's excruciating and relentless project to understand the mind of the Trumper without ever talking about racism. Zito was more than happy to provide the liberal world with countless portraits of rational, eloquent, democratic, curious Trump voters who were always just this close to voting, going blue, as she says. But she even got a book deal and a Harvard teaching fellowship out of it. Unfortunately, as people have been pointing out with increasing frequency, a lot of it appears to be BS, but she uses the real word because she's in the Huffington Post. Most recently, a few threads on Twitter calling a number of aspects of her work into question have been making the rounds. There was the inanimate carbon rod tweet storm that we read about yesterday, the Kilgore Trout one. I don't know if we heard about that one or not, but both hitting the same highlights that we discussed yesterday. The critiques amount to a wholesale demolition of the Zito method, her shtick, which, as she has told us time and time again, is absolutely not a shtick, consists of driving to blue-collar Rust Belt towns and letting regular folks tell her in their own words why they support Donald Trump. Thus does she fashion herself as the antithesis of the fake news coastal elite. Much of her gimmick rests on the idea that her interlocutors are apostate. Do I even have that pronunciation correct? I never say it out loud. I don't think I ever use that word. Populist Democrats, apostate perhaps, populist Democrats who swung to the Republican Party. This is the story many conservatives prefer to tell about Trump, that he's a populist phenomenon, not the product of regular country clubs and chambers of commerce republicanism. Certainly, these left-to-right populists exist in America, but Zito has a knack, allegedly, for finding the ones who, apparently unbeknownst to her, have become Republican Party officials. That was the big problem. This is why the criticisms of her are so damning. Zito is supposed to be the one telling you how it actually is. Okay, so you can see she's taking the same tack, essentially, as those tweet stormers did, that she's essentially a fabulist and little more. Now, Alex Parker was disheartened by this, and he appears to have put together a case too. I want to make you familiar with the case that he made, and maybe the best way to do it is to comb through his timeline. And I don't know whether it's better to go back to the beginning of it and spend time searching for the beginning of his objections, or to just read them backwards. Let me see if I can scan back a bit here and find the beginning of his objections as I saw them last night. And I don't even know how far back I have to go to hit it, but I'm still scrolling here. I'm just, because he intersperses a number of other topics, as we all do. He skips around from time to time and answers other people's objections to various other things. But, let's see. Have I gone too far here? No, I mean, gosh, there's so much here. But maybe I need to start in the middle and just wing it from there. All right, well, let's see. No, here, back to mid-afternoon yesterday, or late evening yesterday. Okay, let's see. Still looking at the Zito. I'm sorry about this. Okay, we'll stop right about here and say, no, this looks like the beginning. Boy, this is tougher than I thought. Okay. All right. So, as he says, 15 hours ago he begins with this. So, that thread going around from the anonymous newly created account purporting to show that Selena Zito has been dressing up GOP officials as Rust Belt Dems is not honest at all. That's his assertion. And he's talking here specifically, he includes the beginning of the tweet storm from Inanimate Carbon Rod, the one that started yesterday with, or over the weekend with, so Selena Zito blocked me and I couldn't figure out why, right? And then he's the one that comes up with all the examples of this person is supposed to be a lifelong Democrat, but it turns out they are a Republican official. So here's where he picks up. So he includes one of the Inanimate Carbon Rod tweets. Rural Howard County's Neil Schaefer is chairman of the Howard County Republican Party. We discussed this one yesterday, and there's a selection from the book screenshotted here describing him that says swing in votes in Howard, the county, is notable because it's a county that doesn't really have an active official Republican Party apparatus, as that term is traditionally understood. The one it does have is run by Schaefer, however he pronounces his name, who says they are often left to their own devices by the state party. So Parker is basically using that screenshot to say, look, really? The idea that she was passing him off as a Democrat doesn't make any sense. Neil Schaefer is chairman of a county Republican Party in Iowa. No S, Sherlock. That's why Zito interviewed him, as she states in the book. Well, that's a very different take on things, as she states in the book. And then responding to Inanimate Carbon Rods, pointing out that there's Dawn Martin, whose vote was totally up for grabs, even though she's the elected secretary of the Lake County GOP and a Republican candidate for county commissioner. It seemed very damning, right? This part, Parker says, is true. Dawn Martin was a candidate for Lake County commissioner. The election was earlier this month. She was also county GOP secretary. It's unclear for how long, so why did this woman suddenly get so interested in local GOP politics? Such a mystery. It might, he says in the next tweet, have something to do with her husband, elected as a Republican county sheriff in 2016, a fact which Zito cleverly hid by mentioning it 5 pages in. Screenshot of that mention. Then Inanimate Carbon Rod's complaint that Zito described Patty Bloomstein as a Democratic donor. She's on the Republican committee with Dave Rubico. She's also secretary of the Erie Republican Independent Conservative PAC, which totally sounds like a thing for Democrats. You remember that comment, right? Alex Parker says, well, Rod claims Zito describes Paula Bloomstein as a Democratic donor. Actually, she describes how Bloomstein went from being a supporter of Erie's 2008 Dem Congresswoman to an impassioned advocate for the 2010 GOP challenger. This is, he says, breathtakingly dishonest. Zito describes Paul Rubico as a lifelong Dem and Obama voter who went over to Trump, but he's actually a county GOP committee person with a habit of writing angry anti-Obama letters to the Erie, Pennsylvania paper. Pretty damning, right? Zito, in her response, notes that he only recently ran county committee person, and this is verifiably true. And his letters are a recent activity. Does it seem improbable that he voted for Obama? Maybe. Maybe that's why she interviewed him. That would be a good point. If you're wondering how I verified that, there's more in heaven and earth than a Google search. County committee is an elected position, and the election was in 2018. Here's a link. In the prior 2014 election, the committee person was John Voley. Link for that, too. I could go on, he says, but you see the con by now. In all cases, the person was either never presented as a Dem or only recently became a Republican official. Cynthia Sacco wasn't supposed to be a hard Dem, but representative of Macomb County, one of the most famous U.S. bellwethers. I wouldn't describe myself as a huge fan of Selena Zito's work, though seriously, not literally, was one of the best lines of 2016. I haven't read her book, but frankly, I'm aghast that this got so much circulation, including from journalists. Maybe I'm a crusty, old-school, rust-belt Midwesterner, but I would never retweet an attack on a colleague's credibility, no matter how much I disagreed with their work, unless I knew it was something I could stand by. It's clear that's not the case for those who RT'd this garbage. I really have no opinion on whether the side-by-side comparisons of the two threads, I guess, or others indicate that the quotes are fabricated, which would seem to be mutually exclusive with those scurrilous charges. I'm unconvinced, but others can judge. So there you have it. There's more, and he continues on, as he frequently does, as I frequently do, lingering on the subject. But this appears to be something worth perhaps revisiting at some point. I want to put out there that it's possible that, let's say, there was, if you quote correctly or show screenshots from one page or another, it might be that you're removing some context from Zito's book that was presented pages earlier that you just think is missing, or you may have missed in your first read of these things, or if you went to the index looking for names, if they use an index, you could miss perhaps important context. And, we like to know the nuance and the full story of these things and let people decide. You can still come down on the side that Selena Zito is a hack. I don't know whether I would make that recommendation to you or not. I can't tell you because I'm blocked for some reason. I can't watch her on Twitter. But, and I'm not sure why that is, and it may very well be the case that she's overly sensitive about things. But, we like to have the full context and talk about how complicated and complex these interpersonal interactions in politics really can be. Monica has, our Mommy CA20, Monica has sent us a larger clip, I guess, courtesy of Jose. Hi, Jose. Let's see. Who's Jose that we're thinking of? Jose, can you see? I always love that joke. Sends around a larger clip of oh no, is this a larger clip? No, it isn't. It's the same clip. So that's probably not going to help us on this one. But I have seen that 7-second clip. The what I need is a longer one. Okay. Let's see. What can we include in the last couple minutes of the show and make coherent sense of and not leave too many things dangling? I did find out from the article that we suspended reading while Armando joined us during the top of the hour break. Maybe we can continue with that. But this is the article that Trump is referring to when he denies that Jared and Ivanka had anything to do with pushing McGahn out. That part actually comes pretty quickly after the point at which we stopped reading, which was the point at which we learned that McGahn was taken by surprise when Trump tweeted that he would be leaving the White House. It does say, though, it has been an open secret, they say, inside the White House, and McGahn planned to leave after Kavanaugh's confirmation process was concluded, one way or the other. But he hadn't discussed his plans directly with Trump. And so that's why the surprise to see the confirmation of his departure being tweeted. McGahn, who has told many friends that he is wearily endured countless political and legal battles, saw Trump's tweet as abrupt but typical of how the president acts, and it did not make him angry. According to two people familiar with his reaction was, of course this happened this way, one person said. Now, Trump was in part prompted to tweet on Wednesday morning after reading a report in Axios about McGahn's likely departure. According to two Trump advisors who were not authorized to speak publicly, Trump read the story and quickly decided to act, giving a formal nod to what had been an expected move inside the White House, advisors said. The announcement also came as Trump's family members and senior advisors, who are the same people here, daughter Ivanka Trump, although I don't know if I would count Ivanka as a senior advisor. I'm not sure whether she actually does anything at all. Anyway, but you get the point. Ivanka and Jared have seen their relationship with McGahn fray over time, Trump associates said. One Trump aide described McGahn as someone who, quote, had to tell them no on some issues and, I guess therefore, never clicked with them personally. Kushner and Ivanka Trump, along with the president, have regularly chafed at McGahn's counsel and caution. The associate said they hate the lawyers. You know that. Many Republicans on Capitol Hill, who see McGahn as a stable force and accessible official, were stunned and dismayed by Trump's announcement. Oh, well, not that they're going to change their minds. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Charles Grassley tweeted on Wednesday that he hopes it's not true that McGahn is leaving and urged Trump not to let that happen. Here's a sound effect for you, pal. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell called it sad news for our country. McGahn's role in seeking to transform the judiciary, which is really what McConnell is interested in, so I don't know why he's so sad, helped, in other words, it'll happen anyway without McGahn. He'll just get somebody else to do the same thing. He helped select Trump's 2 Supreme Court nominees and dozens of picks for lower federal courts, made him a favorite of conservatives who view the endeavor as the most successful project of Trump's presidency. So there is that. Let's see, I'll skip down a little bit. White House attorney Emmett Flood, veteran Washington lawyer whom McGahn recruited to join the West Wing in May, is seen by most Trump aides as a likely replacement because of his rapport with the president and knowledge of impeachment proceedings, which is really not a good thing to have to admit. McGahn's impending departure is widely seen within Trump circles as the culmination of frustrations that have come with each new crisis that he has been forced to handle since Trump took office, from a scandal over then National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's disclosure of contacts with Russian officials to the many times the president has lashed out about Mueller's probe. To that end, with the remaining seconds, almost literally, that we have with the show, I want to bring to your attention Empty Wheel's latest, or not latest, I don't know, but a recent article that brings up another point we probably won't get through, but recommended reading, as always. Don McGahn's BS report covering up the Flynn firing. So right from the beginning, he's been covering for him. Murray Wass is at the heart of this one, who she says writes about one and only one subject on the Russia investigation, has, for the second time, written a story claiming that a report Don McGahn wrote on February 15th, 2017, and not Trump's serial offers to pardon people who are serving as his firewall, is the strongest evidence to date implicating the President of the United States in an obstruction of justice, and the most compelling evidence we yet know of that Donald Trump may have obstructed justice. Murray then goes on to parrot Rudy Giuliani's preferred narrative about what would happen next. Interesting, because they're usually on this same page, Marcy and Murray. Let's take a look. Several people who have reviewed a portion of this evidence say that based on what they know, they believe it is now all but inevitable that the special counsel will complete a confidential report presenting evidence that President Trump violated the law. Rosenstein, who oversees the special counsel's work, would then have to decide on turning over that report to Congress for the House of Representatives to consider whether to instigate impeachment proceedings. Now, Marcy adds to this, because even people covering the story closely mistake the Flynn firing for an obstruction crime instead of evidence of conspiracy, I'd like to lay out why this story is silly. This will lay out things implicit in this post which shows that the fact that the White House narrative about Flynn is all an effort to treat his firing. Oh, we got the wrong music once again. Let's try it again. Treat his firing as obstruction and not collusion. This is also a very nuanced point. It's leading to really weird disassociations here between people that are, like I said, typically on the same page. And I find sometimes that reading these things live turns out to be a bit of a curveball. Let's see. Neither story about Don McGahn's exoneration of Trump should be credited. Murray claims that because Trump knew that Mike Flynn was under investigation when he asked Jim Comey to let the investigation into Flynn go, it will undercut an explanation offered in January that Trump thought Flynn had been cleared by the FBI. So she's taking exception with Murray Wass's reporting here, which isn't usually the case. And interesting that we come to that as a reaction, I thought, to Robert Costa's passing on of information that McGahn's departure is, I guess, the culmination of a long series of frustrations that began with the cover-up of, or the attempt to get Jim Comey off of the Flynn investigation. Lots to untangle. Luckily, we've got a Friday show to do that with, but some question mark about whether or not I'm going to be able to do that live. At any rate, time to hand over the microphone to Justice.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, let's call an end to this disorganized show and hand things over to Justice. What's he got on tap for you? Let's see. Trump and his government are now using birtherism against Hispanic Americans. Top and important story. I'm glad he'll be covering that. There'll be much more as usual, but I can't fit it all in before we break off the show and hand it over to him. We'll be back tomorrow.